Okay, so imagine this. You're a princess from a tiny, not very wealthy German state.
Right, basically a political nobody.
Exactly. Your name is Sophie of Anhalt-Zerbst. You're a teenager, maybe 14 years old.
And then, seemingly out of nowhere, you get the call.
You're chosen to travel across all of Europe to become the future Empress of Russia.
It sounds like a fairy tale. But this is the true story of how that girl seized an empire. Today we're looking at how she navigated palace politics, took absolute power, and tried to transform Russia using this idea of enlightened despotism.
So let's start there. This teenager, Sophie, steps onto Russian soil. What's the very first thing she does?
She knew she was an outsider, so her strategy was, well, it was total dedication to Russia, and she made sure everyone could see it.
How so?
She started learning the Russian language, like, relentlessly, day and night. But the biggest move, the most powerful one, was religious.
She converted.
She did. She converted from her German Lutheran faith to the Russian Orthodox Church. And when she did, she took a new name. Catherine?
So that name change, it wasn't just a formality, it was political branding, right?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
It says a clear message to all the powerful people at court. I am one of you now. My destiny is Russia's destiny.
And that made her popular.
Instantly. The church loved it, the nobles loved it, and she needed that support because the man she was there to marry, Grand Duke Peter III, was doing the exact opposite.
Oh, okay, tell us about him. Why was he so unpopular?
Oh, Peter was a mess. He was childish, and he was obsessed with Prussia, which was a rival German state.
So while Catherine is trying to be more Russian,
He's forcing the Russian Imperial Guard to wear Prussian-style uniforms and march like Germans. He even made fun of the Orthodox Church's traditions. He alienated everyone.
so their marriage must have been.
Terrible. Deeply unhappy. Catherine felt completely isolated.
But she used that isolation. This is when she really started preparing.
Exactly. These became her study years.
Mm.
She basically locked herself away and just read. And not, romance novels.
She was reading books on law, history.
And philosophy. The big radical ideas coming out of the Enlightenment in France. She was reading thinkers like Voltaire and Montesquieu.
And what did she get from all that reading?
Two things, really. First, she realized Russia was this huge, inefficient empire that desperately needed modern ideas to fix it.
And the second thing?
That her husband was completely, totally incapable of leading that change. The reading gave her the confidence to believe that she could do it better.
Okay, so that sets the stage. By 1762, she's done reading about power. She decides to take it.
It was an incredibly brazen and dangerous move. A coup. Peter had just become emperor, and he was making enemies everywhere. Catherine saw her chance.
She had the support of the military.
Yes, the Imperial Guard. They saw her as the real defender of Russia, not Peter. So with their backing and the blessing of the church, she had Peter arrested. He was forced to give up the crown.
Wow, so just like that, she's in charge. But she's still a foreign woman who seized power. How does she make people see her as the rightful ruler?
Symbolism. It was all about the symbolism. She was immediately declared Empress of all the Russias and staged this huge, spectacular coronation in Moscow.
Why Moscow? The capital was St. Petersburg.
Because Moscow was the ancient, traditional, spiritual heart of Russia. The ceremony was designed to make her look like the legitimate, God-given ruler, not some German who stole the throne.
And this is where her core philosophy comes in. Enlightened despotism. It sounds like a contradiction.
It really does.
Yeah.
So let's break it down. Despot just means a ruler with absolute total power.
No democracy, no parliament. What she says goes.
Exactly. The enlightened part is about how she chose to use that absolute power. Instead of just tradition, she wanted to use reason and modern ideas to improve the country.
But if she's reading all these philosophers who talk about liberty, why not share power?
Because she believed Russia was just too big and, frankly, too backwards for democracy at the time. She thought the only way to make fast, effective changes, like modernizing laws or building schools, was for one strong, smart person to be in complete control.
A benevolent dictator, basically.
That's exactly how she saw herself.
So let's look at some of those changes. She put a huge focus on education.
A massive focus, especially for women, which was revolutionary. She founded the Smolny Institute.
And what was that?
It was the first state-funded school for girls in all of Russia. This wasn't just about teaching them to read and write.
What was the bigger goal?
The goal was to create a new generation of educated, cultured Russian women. She believed they would raise smarter children and, help modernize the whole country from the family up.
She also used art and culture as a political tool.
Oh, absolutely. She
Oh.
started collecting thousands of paintings and sculptures. That collection became the foundation of the famous Hermitage Museum.
And she invited artists and architects to Russia.
Yes, to design these beautiful, grand buildings. It was all about PR. She wanted the rest of Europe to look at Russia and see a sophisticated, powerful, modern nation, not some frozen wasteland. Culture was a form of power.
She also tried to tackle the legal system with a document called the Nakaz.
Right, the nakaz, or instruction. It was basically her grand vision for a brand new legal code for Russia.
And it was inspired by all those Enlightenment thinkers she'd been reading.
Heavily. It talked about things like equality before the law, ending torture. I mean, really radical ideas for the time.
So did it work? Did she get this new legal code passed?
Well, no, not really. She brought people together to discuss it, but there was too much resistance from the conservative nobles. The most ambitious parts never happened.
So it was a failure.
The reform itself failed, but the attempt was important. It signaled that she was a new kind of ruler. And she did manage to make the government bureaucracy run a lot more smoothly, which was a big deal.
Okay, there's another area where she was really enlightened, and it's public health, specifically smallpox.
This is one of her most courageous moments. Smallpox was a terrifying killer. It wiped out huge parts of the population.
And there was a new risky procedure to prevent it, right? Inoculation.
Yes, a very early form of vaccination. People were terrified of it. They thought it was dangerous. So to convince her people, Catherine did something incredible.
She got inoculated herself.
She did. She was the first person in Russia to do it. She brought in a doctor from Britain and made the whole thing a public event. She was risking her life.
Wow. And when she stayed healthy?
It changed everything. The court lined up to get inoculated. Then she ordered campaigns across the empire, built new hospitals, founded medical schools. It was a huge step forward for Russian public health, all because she led by example.
So we have this modern, brave, intelligent ruler, but now we have to talk about the great contradiction of her reign.
Serfdom.
Serfdom. She's talking about liberty and reading philosophers, but millions of people in her country were serfs.
Right. They were essentially slaves, owned by the nobles, tied to the land they worked. And Catherine, she didn't free them.
In fact, she did the opposite. She gave the nobles more power over their serfs. How do you explain that?
It all comes down to political survival. She came to power in a coup. She needed the absolute loyalty of the nobility to stay on the throne.
And the price of their loyalty was control over the serfs.
That was the price. She was terrified that if she freed the serfs, it would cause a massive rebellion, that the whole country would collapse into chaos. She chose stability over her ideals.
And that fear of rebellion wasn't just in her head, it actually happened.
It did. The Pugachev Rebellion. It was the biggest crisis of her entire time as Empress. A man named Yevgeny Pugachev started a huge, violent uprising.
And what was his claim?
Get this. He claimed to be her dead husband, Peter III, come back to life.
No way.
Yes. And he promised to free all the serfs and give them land. Thousands of desperate people flocked to join him. It was a terrifying threat to her rule.
How did she handle it?
She had to send her best generals and huge armies to crush it. It took 2 years of brutal fighting.
And after that was over?
It just confirmed her fears. She became even more convinced that any big social change was too dangerous. She tightened her control even more after that.
Let's shift to how she got the title the Great. It wasn't for her internal policies, but for making Russia bigger.
Much bigger. She was an incredible military strategist and diplomat. Her biggest wins were against the Ottoman Empire in the south.
Which gave Russia access to the Black Sea. Why was that so important?
It was all about trade and power. Access to the Black Sea meant Russia finally had warm water ports.
Meaning ports that don't freeze in the winter.
Exactly. The Russian Navy could operate all year round, and they could trade easily with the Mediterranean. It turned Russia into a true global naval power.
She also expanded west into Poland.
Right. She, along with Austria and Prussia, basically carved up Poland and took huge pieces of its territory.
Yeah.
This moved Russia's borders deep into Europe.
So by the end of her reign, the empire is massive. How did she even manage it all?
Through a really smart administrative reform. She knew it was too big to run just from the capital. So she divided the entire empire into smaller, more manageable provinces and districts.
She decentralized things.
She did. Each province had its own governor and officials to handle local taxes and laws. It sounds like she was giving up power, but it actually made her central control more effective because her laws could now be enforced everywhere.
So when we look back at her legacy, what's the final picture?
Well, she left Russia far larger, far stronger, and definitely more respected on the world stage. Her reign is often called Russia's Golden Age for a reason,
She's seen as one of history's most successful female leaders.
for sure. Her life story is just incredible proof of how intelligence and sheer hard work can take you from being a minor princess to ruling one of the biggest empires on earth.
But it's also a story about difficult choices.
Absolutely. The great contradiction of her life was having to choose between the enlightened ideals she believed in and the often brutal political reality she needed to navigate to keep her power and hold the empire together.
A complex leader for a complex time. That's the story of Catherine the Great. Good luck with your studies.